the more you understand, the less you attribute God to. The more you understand, the less you feel the need to attribute God to, I'd say. Because God is just a catch-all. I don't know, so God.
Welcome to Voices of Deconversion. We share the inspirational stories of deconversion told by former Christians who are now atheist or agnostic. Our stories remind us we're in it together. They encourage us as we discover who we are and help us to embrace who we become. Now here's Steve with today's guest.
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone back for this week's episode. My guest today was born in the Bible Belt of Tennessee. She was raised an evangelical Christian, and after years of following suit and hoping this would lead to acceptance, she realized she didn't see eye to eye with the limited thinking around her. In college, she delved into Hinduism, Buddhism, and New Age beliefs. She spent hundreds on crystals, chakra readings, Deepak, Chopra, and Eckhart Tolle books. The only New Age thing about her now are 2 Sanskrit tattoos. With some prompting from a friend, she eventually made her way from agnostic to atheist. Skeptic Nikki was born on Twitter and has evolved into an influential platform for atheism, logic, and education. Her secular blog at skepticnikki.com is in the works, in addition to a video podcast that will use Socratic and epistemological questioning and motivational interviewing to help people move away from entrapping religious belief. She enjoys reading, live music, art exhibits, museums, and she is a very busy mortgage professional. Nikki and her fiancé live in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm very happy to be joined today by Nikki Terry. Nikki, thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, Steve. How are you doing today? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, doing good. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what you're working on as far as your website goes and all of that?
Okay. Well, first, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast. I know that you've interviewed some awesome people in the past, like Candace Gorham and Alex Jules, and they play a huge role in the atheist community. So I was honored to be invited to be on your show, so I appreciate it. I thankfully have had a bit of luck with Skeptic Nikki. I started it about a couple of years ago, and it's grown substantially. I hope that people have respect for what I say. I'm really looking to take a more active role in the atheist community and move a little bit more off the sidelines from Twitter onto blogging, but not so much blogging, just only that, but videos as well. Because I've noticed that a lot of people tell me there's not a lot of emotional support for the secular community or personal support for the secular community because it's kind of disjointed. So I would like to start something that helps out with that a little bit because people are going through a lot. I mean, you don't stop having drama in your life just because you leave religion. So I know that's a big problem, especially in the United States.
So tell me a little bit about that. You said the atheist community or the skeptic community is disjointed. So what do you mean by that? And then how are you trying to help that with what you're doing?
Well, in the United States, especially in the Southeast, and that's what my perspective comes from, that's where my expertise lies, is working with individuals who were previously religious and who are moving away from it. And when I say that the secular community is disjointed, I mean that there seems to be a bit of a taboo still to be considered atheist in the United States. So a lot of people aren't really open with their atheism, their lack of belief in their secularism initially. Mm-hmm. So they don't necessarily tell others about what they're going through, so people don't necessarily know there's others around them who are, enduring some of the same things. So there's a disconnection there, which is unfortunate because everybody's going through crazy, there's shit all the time, and I curse, and it makes me comfortable. So
You're good.
This is a part of me that's not really intellectual, but I remember I watched Trailer Park Boys and I do enjoy it. And there was this episode when Ricky said, if I can't curse or smoke, I'm fucked. Or I can't swear or smoke, I'm fucked. And I don't smoke cigarettes, but I do cuss. And if I can't curse, I have to think too much about what I'm saying.
Well, that's good because it makes you be yourself, and that's important.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. As I was saying previously, there's not a lot of support in the secular community. A lot of people are leaving religion. I believe that this upcoming generation is the least religious the United States has ever seen, which
Cool.
means that because we're moving from a predominantly religious to a less religious platform in the United States, there are people who have family members who are still religious. So when they're going through these things, through which they would typically enlist the help of family, such as, stresses, emotional problems, deaths, regular life things, they may end up getting religious advice they don't want, but because they're hesitant to tell their family they're leaving religion, and also to tell others that they've left religion because of the taboo and the stigma, they may be subject to getting advice that's religiously motivated, or maybe not, catered to how they would view the world.
Yeah.
Um, so the site's going to have a very scientific platform, a very scientific foundation. Advice that I give is going to be backed by science, because that's the only way to live. You got to be scientifically literate, period.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, it's a huge need. I mean, being out there for people who basically are a religious minority and we need each other. We need people out there being public, and that way people can find us.
Exactly. People need to know it's okay to be secular. They need to know that it's perfectly fine to think logically regarding religion, and that religion is a very, very sad part of human history that needs to be buried in the past. And I believe that, and I'm going to do everything I can to try to get people just to be more. I mean, it causes a lot of harm. It limits our point of view. In the United States, we're dealing with a lot of mistreatment, the limiting of rights of certain groups, marginalized groups, due to antiquated religious beliefs. And I applaud people for leaving it, and they deserve support. And that's what I want the website to provide.
That's cool. So you consider yourself an atheist? Is that your preferred term?
Atheist, anti-theist, whichever.
Either one, huh?
Yeah, I'll take both.
Okay.
Predominantly anti-theist, though.
Okay, well tell me why. Why do you like that term?
I like the term because I really do believe, based on the evidence provided, that there is not a deity as humans would define it. And I know I do have to defend that, because I am making the claim that deities don't exist. So I would define a god as basically an intellectual idea or a concept that humans have invented as a crutch, or basically a catch-all. And that is personified, pretty much. It's a personified anthropomorphic projection that humans have created in order to try to understand the world better. And based on that, I don't believe that that thing actually exists.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Some
like,
some atheists come on, they say I'm an agnostic atheist. That's probably more where I'm at, but
yeah,
I
sure.
like that you're an anti-theist, and you have your reasons to back up why you believe what you do.
Absolutely, and I have no problem with talking about that. And if somebody provides me with a definition of God that doesn't align with what I've defined, I may believe in that God. Or like I believe somebody had referenced previously on a podcast, I think maybe the Atheist Experience, that if your definition of God is a tree, well, okay, then I'm a theist because there's a tree and I believe those exist. Now, if you say
Yeah.
the God has supernatural powers, or the tree can listen to me talk, or it's something like the creepy grandmother Willow and Pocahontas, we might have to have a talk about that. But people aren't defining gods as trees, or things like that. Well, they might,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Well, some
it's
do,
mainly
yeah, like nature,
aspect.
some,
That's if that's what it is, and I'm all for God, but that's
yeah.
that's not the definition that I
Right. And that's not 99% of people don't really view it that way.
exactly right exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, I respect the agnostic atheist view.
Yeah, I like to hear what everybody has to say about why they use that label, because I feel like atheists or agnostics or whatever we call ourselves, we have a reason for choosing that label, humanist or
Oh
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I'd call myself all of the above except agnostic. Definitely humanist.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and I guess get a little background. In what ways was Christianity a part of your childhood, and how did it influence you?
Oh wow. This podcast is an hour, and how long?
It's about an hour and a half usually.
I know. Well, if you want the full background on that, you're gonna have to add several hours to that time frame.
That's all right.
Um,
We'll just try to hit the highlights, and yeah.
yeah, well, goodness, even those are pretty. It was just my whole life has been dominated by religion, because I've predominantly grown up I've lived in the Southeast of the Bible Belt of the United States, which is, I guess, the most affluently Christian or affluently religious place in the world. Beside that's Christian, not Islam, obviously, but not religious in general, but definitely with Christianity. Um, my upbringing was a little bit weird because being African American, and that is definitely going to come up as I, step out here more on the scene. That's the most glaring thing about me besides being a female. And I know I'm going to have to discuss that a lot of my background and a lot of my reference points for religion kind of come from that standpoint. So I'm going to talk about that a little.
Yeah, definitely.
We were chatting previously. I said that my parents weren't big on the Baptist religion when I was growing up. Now their perception may have changed. I doubt it, but since then. But I do remember there being differences pointed out between evangelical Christians or quote unquote non-denominational, which is basically just a combination of all of the fun things that they want to that they like from other religions, because see they weren't Baptist, but yet we baptized people. It was very odd, but most African Americans tend to be Southern, or like, well, in the South, Southern Baptist, AME Baptist. Being evangelical is really unusual for an African American. It's predominantly a Caucasian-based religion. It's more Republican, really, and conservative, and African Americans, on the whole, tend not to necessarily be conservative in their views because, of course, well, there's reasons for that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it was odd for me because I had to not only find ways to comprehend the odd things that were being told to me regarding the religion, but also the glaring differences between me and the other children. So a lot of my religious background is kind of punctuated with kind of underhanded bigotry and things like that I'm recalling. So that contributes to the negativity that I associated with it. But growing up in the Southeast, there's a history there, so it
Right.
definitely is part of it. But
So can you remember? I mean, you mentioned. I want to say you said underhanded bigotry, but it was something else. It was like less direct bigotry, like kind of indirect or subtle.
yes. Being the oldest, I went through like these stages of puberty first and got totally screwed. My parents had a completely unhealthy view and still have well, it's warm. It's no, I'll give them credit. They've become moderately liberal, but more liberal. No, they've gotten better. I'll say that.
They've gotten better. There you go. We'll go with that.
Better. We'll go with that, and I'll give them that. And I've told them that, and it scares them because I approve of things they're doing, and my father says when we agree, that's a problem. But my parents, they were very strict regarding dating, and I really didn't have a lot of other guys there that looked like me, so I used to have crushes on white guys, and that was a really large problem. And I overheard my father on the phone with the pastor. It got so bad for one young man's father, and I didn't necessarily know how to talk to boys. I was just like, oh, you're cute, and just basic flirting things in high school. And the guy's father actually called the pastor, and then they called my father and conferenced him in, and we're like, we're going to talk about Nicole's behavior towards Jason. We're going to go to Wendy's and get a Frosty and talk about it. And I remember overhearing that on my father's landline that day, and it was horrid. And of course I would have to, but I mean, he was on the, there were other young ladies that would show him attention, and the reaction was not the same.
Yeah.
But it was embarrassing, I guess.
Yeah, of course that would be.
I know that it wasn't really viewed positively. There's additional explanations, but not really being supported in puberty and trying to understand how to relate to boys based on my parents' very strict religious views, because they were, when you showed lust of the flesh, you got a Bible verse. That was that paired with being rejected for various reasons, and that was difficult. But I mean, that's something that stands out, I'd say.
What was your church? You said evangelical is normally like a white version of Christianity, which seems to be true.
It is predominantly Caucasian in the United States. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess the United States, they have the largest following. So yeah, of course.
So was your church then predominantly white? Okay.
My life was. So, and I think it kind of may have backfired on my parents. They worked very hard to give us opportunity and education, and in through that, I became educated. And
Yeah.
now I'm not a Christian
Yeah.
because that's, doesn't align with what's demonstrable in nature.
So
So.
your parents were both raised evangelical, or did they come from different
Oh no,
backgrounds?
they came from the traditional African American, like Southern Baptist, kind of Baptist, quite, that kind of traditional background. My father's parents were a little bit more dysfunctional, but he got his, a lot of his religious influence from his grandparents who kind of
Hmm.
stepped in. So, and plus both of them growing up in poverty definitely influenced that as well. They worked very hard. My parents worked very hard to give us a better life. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and you said you were the oldest of how many children?
6.
Wow, six
Yeah.
kids.
My mama wanted to have her quiver full, is what she said. My quiver
Uh-huh.
full, and I will be blessed.
Well, my wife and I kind of had similar beliefs at first before we
Yeah.
deconverted, so the quiverful stuff's familiar,
Before you realize
sadly.
that with her being a housewife and you making
Hmm. Yeah, like that was ever gonna
one
work out.
income. Yeah,
I
come
know,
on.
as a pastor at that, right? With that, that's not a very well-paying job.
No.
Yeah, unless you make
I
it
mean,
big.
well, it could be if it depends on your message.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
I mean, you could be the next Noel Osteen and have a whole slew of kids you can afford.
Yeah, I don't have that kind of hair though. I think
That's the
it's the
thing.
hair.
I think it's that plastic surgery. It's something.
Oh, that
Yeah.
smile is just like plastered on his face. It's ridiculous. He comes
Promise.
on after I want to say I'm watching like Meet the Press on Sunday mornings and then all of a sudden Joel Osteen's on. I'm like, "Oh, come on."
Really?
Yeah. But sometimes
Oh,
sometimes like once or twice I've listened to his opening cheesy joke. Of course, he always has to open with a cheesy joke.
mm,
Weird that I know that, but anyway. Um,
mm-mm.
so tell me about like your childhood growing up and how religion was a part of it. Did you guys? I mean, what kind of things did your family do that you remember that were really religious types of things?
I know that they put me in a religious preschool. Um, I know that we went to an apostolic church, which was odd
And
because we weren't.
what would that mean? How's that different from just an evangelical?
I know that it varies, of course, from church to church, but what I remember predominantly about apostolics was that they had more well, in my church they were quite strict as well, but they had very strongly delineated male and female roles. I know we weren't allowed to wear pants to school. We couldn't wear jewelry. I know that the girls who were apostolic didn't cut their hair. They wore skirts all the time, no shorts. But the thing was, when some of them, when they weren't at school,
Mm-hmm.
would like if I saw them out in Knoxville, they'd be wearing jeans, or like they
Okay.
would go to the church, they adhere to the standards while there, but then if I'd see them at Walmart or Kroger or Kmart, which yes, Kmart is still a thing in Knoxville, that they'd be in jeans or or sandals or something that would show their feet or so
Yeah.
that was I went to apostolic school, went to public school for about 3 years. They realized that was a bad idea because I started to, like, I guess, become a teenager, and they were like, "You're too much of a teenager. We want you to be like these little odd, submissive, creepy kids at our church. Let's homeschool you, and let's destroy
Ah.
the rest of your high school, social life." So that's where I was homeschooled from sophomore year on, evangelic homeschooled.
And this is after like you had kind of not dated, but you'd been flirting with boys a little bit.
Dated?
Uh,
Oh, dating? No, no, no. We don't date.
Yeah.
I'm so
Um,
sorry. You were to have brotherly and sisterly relationship with the young men in the church. It was Paul, Paul, Paul every time. It was tough. It really was. I mean, being not an ugly person and then getting attraction from, which is normal, males, and then
right.
having your father, your mother smack you upside the head with the Bible, not literally, but
But
it's annoying. I mean, nothing else. It's annoying.
wow. Do you have any memories from your childhood that of well, other than I guess your dad having a frosty with this pastor at Wendy's and talking about how you shouldn't flirt with this guy's son? Do you have any other memories of like,
Yeah.
um,
I played basketball. We traveled. I was almost told I couldn't travel with the team anymore because I was flirting with this boy.
wow,
Yeah, and I was a starter. I mean, my presence would have definitely been. It didn't matter though. I was flirting and exhibiting yeah, I guess
Oh.
carnal, normal, natural feelings, and that's not cool. Not to them, or it wasn't.
So how did your faith develop as you grew older? Did your relationship did your religion or relationship with God did that get deeper, or did it change as you grew?
God has always been viewed by me as kind of a more of a threatening figure
Hmm.
than a coddling figure. I've never found comfort in God. I've always found God to be extremely threatening and just punitive. And, no matter what you do, I'm watching and don't look at this, don't do this, don't do that. I used to be afraid that I wouldn't, not make it before dude came in the clouds. So my relationship with God was never really that. I don't even know I don't know what that means.
Right. So yeah, some conservatives. I mean, that was my experience. Was like we didn't have. It wasn't a religion. It was a relationship. That was our cliche, right?
That's what my parents say, but I don't know necessarily. I mean, they both, when I hear it, it seems needy, like I'm missing something from a human, so I have to create it in sort of like a invisible pseudo,
Hmm.
surrogate way. I mean,
Yeah.
I never had that. God always kind of like, see, I think the reason my relationship with God was punitive was because my relationship with my actual father was punitive. Like he's always been kind of judge, jury, executioner. So I've always, kind of seen similar
Yeah. You associate God the Father with your human
actual
father,
father,
right?
right?
Right. With your human. Yeah.
Exactly.
Your actual father.
But it didn't backfire. It wasn't like, oh, you're comforting as opposed to him. It was, oh,
Yeah.
you're both crazy. So
Yeah, that I mean, I can see, and I've had many other people tell me that God wasn't this comforting, loving figure, or their friends would say that was God to their friends, but for them it wasn't necessarily that way. It sounds like you had the more threatening feeling about what God was. Yeah.
yeah, that was my reference point.
When you were younger, coming from a religiously conservative sort of evangelical, we'll say, did you pray a prayer of salvation, or did you get baptized, or any of that?
I've did the prayer of salvation a few times. I luckily, and I'm so glad I avoided baptism. I was hoping to. Yeah, I never got baptized. I said the prayer of salvation a couple times. One of them was in some weird fucked up situation where my parents and I were arguing, and another was in some fucked up Jesus camp situation. So,
Interesting. So
uh-huh.
tell me about the one. So the first time you asked, you prayed the prayer of salvation, was your parents were fighting, or they were?
No, I argue with them.
Oh, you were arguing with them. Okay, how old were you about that
Yeah,
time?
10.
Wow. Okay, so what were you guys arguing about?
My father and I never got along, so we were arguing about one of numerous things at that point. We usually used to have these long arguments, and they used to, it's almost kind of like tried to convince me. But my dad, he's a talker like me, so there would be long conversations, and at the end, it ended up in me praying the prayer of salvation because the Bible was always just like a constant presence at whatever discussion, like profound discussion. There would be reference drawn to some verse or some thing in the book. So it was, yeah,
So he kind of used that, do you think,
both of them.
to try to get control of you, or to try to win the argument?
That was it wasn't necessarily a winning of the argument. In their home, that was the foundation of all reasoning. So if I want you to behave a certain way, it's because the Bible says this, and that's my interpretation of it. If I want you to see the world a certain way, it's because the Bible says this, that's my interpretation of it. So in order to present that to you, I'm going to support my interpretation and my view that I want you to share by pulling this book out and referencing the verse that I'm thinking of while I'm trying to instruct you,
Mm-hmm.
was more of what it was like. I don't know. I don't think they still do things like this. My parents they used to be very strict, like evangelical. Now, not so much.
Okay.
So the younger siblings definitely got a less religious view of how the world is. They
Yeah.
definitely have a healthier, I'd say, worldview growing up.
You mentioned the other time was when you were at camp, right? A really, you said, a fucked up camp situation.
Yeah.
So what was that?
We used to have these like Jesus camp-ish type things that used to happen every year. They did it for a brief period of time, but I don't know what made it stop. I can imagine my behavior probably didn't help. But because I was always I don't know. I never had this very strict puritanical view that other people had of the world. So
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to be as normal as a child as I thought was possible, but that was always not ever allowed. But um, they had these little weird things where they'd come together at some location. Our church was part of a larger group of churches in the South, which were a part of a larger group of churches kind of in the country. So they would divide themselves up into sections and go have youth camps every
Yeah.
year for a period of time. So it was at one of those type events, and they would have the females, like leaders, meet with the little impressionable females and have the males meet with the impressionable little boys. And I think I was about 14. But yeah, I was in there and I told this woman, I remember at the, well, she was part of the college ministry. They thought, of course, providing us with like, this is who you
Cool.
want to be,
Cool
you
college
know.
kids.
Yeah, which is not even the case at all. And thank goodness I didn't go to UT. Man, it would have been like Big Brother. But yeah,
University of Tennessee, is that what you mean?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah, they were
Yeah.
everywhere.
You were saying that these college age girls would kind of mentor or spend time with the younger campers or something.
As in it, yeah. And I remember telling her I had made, I guess backslidden in some way and was feeling kind of guilty about it. And she looked at me and she kind of tilted her head to the side and she made this little creepy little evangelical girl smile and said, well, maybe you're not a real Christian. And I was like, this bitch. But then it was very, it was subtle because I was more taken aback by her response. It wasn't very caring. It was very like, well, you're not a Christian. And I was like, huh. I was like, well, maybe I should. First, I was like, this is really offensive. And then I thought, well, maybe I should fix that. And now's probably the best time. But mm, that really sticks out.
Well, what would you say? Is there a person, someone, or something that you would say influenced your faith the most, and it can be good or bad?
I guess my uncle and my aunt, they've always been extremely religious as well.
Were you close to them?
Close enough. But yeah, I mean, they lived down here when we lived up there. And so I only saw them, intermittently, but I know that they were quite influential.
In a general sense?
Kind of in a general sense, I'd say.
Is this the uncle that became a pastor?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. That's obviously especially being associated with such a large name, that's definitely going to put you in a position of influence. So he's such a genuine person, and it just seems so unusual to me for him to be, I don't know, associated. I almost would rather him start his own church. I'd go, just every once in a while as support because I'm
Yeah.
not threatened by, I don't mind going.
Hmm.
I mean, if, but I just can't understand that association. I guess that would definitely play a role, but they've been going to World Changers for a minute. I do remember that.
World Changers, and is that the Creflo Dollar Church or World
That's the
Changers?
Creflo
Okay,
Dollar.
and that's where he's a pastor.
Uh-huh. Yes.
I have my uncle's a pastor, and actually he gave like a farewell. He was moving, and so he gave like a farewell address or farewell sermon address.
Hmm.
He
Well,
gave a sermon, yeah, and I went, and of course there were things in it that I didn't agree with, and it was an
sure.
interesting experience bringing my kids who are not religious and my wife obviously, but that was the church that we kind of had a lot of our experiences at growing up and our religious experiences and stuff. And but yeah, like you were saying, I mean, I have no problem showing up and supporting him and my aunt.
Right, right. I have no problem. I don't necessarily understand it, but
Yeah.
I will definitely family first. You don't go against the family, That's that's definitely how I feel about that. So.
Well, you mentioned you had lots of siblings, and you were homeschooled a little bit. What else is significant about that time in your life?
just trying to be a normal person and being restricted by religious belief, being, that was definitely an issue. And I brought that up previously. That was just odd. It just seemed weird to me. The whole situation now, when I look back on it, the people just kind of, it's the very odd cultish way of thinking. Like if someone tried to come to the church who didn't necessarily agree with their views or was a little bit liberal or thought dating was okay rather than courting, or and maybe, and all I can hope is that this church has progressed in their views just a little bit. Being in Knoxville, Tennessee, I doubt it, but I just remember things like that, and it just seemed really off-putting and just divisive. The church has always been just just a really cliquish, judgmental place, and it wasn't a place of comfort for me.
So would you say that you played along, like you did what you were supposed to, but you never really like bought in with all your heart kind of thing? Like you never were like in like, oh, I'm embracing this, Christianity or whatever.
It was hard to do that. I really wanted to be a Christian because I was there were some, and I mean, I do talk a lot about the basic, the relationships I've had with others. But one of the big things for me was that fear of death, like what happens afterwards. And I didn't necessarily, heaven wasn't really the motivator. It was more hell. Hell was the motivator.
Yeah.
So, because definitely spending eternity with, oh gosh, I mean, I know my family wouldn't want to spend eternity with me, and I wouldn't want to spend eternity with them. And I think we all can be honest with that about it. But hell definitely was a deterrent from leaving the religion. And also it was such a core part of my parents' life, and being accepted by them would have been lovely. I mean, being the offspring of something, you definitely wanted to like you, I'd think, and to be as much like it as possible. And that was just very hard for me.
Do you feel like you tried really hard to please your parents as far as your behavior being Christian behavior and doing well in school and you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is rooted in that. I mean, but when you grow up in an environment like that, I mean, it's the religion all of us, or the reason all of us religious or were, your family.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people now who just think it's complete bullshit, but they stick around because it's their family and it's important to them. And being in the United States, especially, I know there are people who are probably watching overseas and are like, what the hell is happening in the United States?
Oh, I know.
That's a very good question, by the way. But yeah, religion is still very, very big here. It's great. I mean, look at the nonsense that we're putting up with. All of this foolishness has caught up to us. It's very widespread, and that's why people here are religious. It doesn't make any damn sense. It's the most nonsensical thing.
Yeah.
But because your mother, your father, the most important people in your life, believe it, and they instill it in you so young as a basis for interpreting the rest of your life, it's kind of hard to separate yourself from.
Right. And what other ways were your parents strict as far as religion goes? What other ways did they use religion to kind of shape, their children as their children grew? I mean,
I guess there was more of a hierarchical view in the home, and not necessarily. Like, there were definitely no equals in that house. You were not empowered as a child. You were subject to your first God, then dad, then mom. You're a child. And that wasn't a very empowering view. But, I would say a child is below everything and has not as much value. I don't know if that would have changed even if my parents were religious. That might be more of a cultural thing. So that may not be fair to attribute that to religion. But I do remember kind of in my home, the interpretation of that was religious, like God, dad, mom, you. So that was a problem, definitely.
It's almost used as a justification for enforcing very strict rules and very strict ways of behaving.
Yes, without much justification, but justification, but without justification. Like,
right.
We're doing this because God said it, then dad said it, then mom said it, but that's not really a reason. So I need to know how to think and be emotionally intelligent. There wasn't a lot of emotional development, I believe, growing up. it was, the Bible said, "Thou shalt not be angry," so don't throw stuff in my house, and
Uh-huh.
it's my job to enforce that. It's not, why are you angry? Are you going to fix this, or what's causing these issues? It was, what does the Bible say about it? And that's not how you solve problems. So I've had to grow into that.
Yeah. So when you were a Christian as a child, do you remember ever running into a doubt or a problem with Christianity that you kind of challenged your parents with?
Yes, the idea of forever in hell didn't make sense to me. I remember and I've told this story before, and I've actually probably referenced it previously on my site, but my mother, I asked her once, doing yard work in hot Tennessee in the summer, do you really go to hell forever? And she said, yes, honey, forever. And that made no sense. It just didn't make sense. I think I was 10. There was a lot happening when I was 10. And I just remember thinking, that is not true. There's no way that's true. It's nonsensical. I guess when I was a child, I don't know, maybe I just should have listened to
So
myself
do you
more,
remember what
but
you said to her when she said that, or did
oh
you?
no, I didn't say anything to her.
But you were thinking in your head like this is nonsense.
Oh yeah, I remember when she said that, I just kind of looked at her and looked away and kind of watched the water coming out of the hose and just thought, huh, that's not true.
So it sounds like you were, Skeptic Nikki's a good name for your handle on Twitter because it sounds like from a young age you were very skeptical.
Yeah, I was. It didn't make sense. People in church, the way they behaved, just the way humans behave when they're worshiping something, it's odd. It is just that odd because you don't act like that every other time. It's a very supplicating gesture to raise your hands, close your eyes, and sway back and forth, and to watch people doing this, and without the target of their affections being visible, and that's odd. It's just weird. And religion really intrigues me. I remember watching that as a kid, and it was very hard for me to do. I felt very self-conscious when I tried to do it. It just all seemed weird to me. But I really wanted to believe it. Geez, it would
Yeah.
have been great. Sometimes I still wish life would be easier for me as a Christian. Like, whoa.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, one, you're in America. Two, you're in the South.
Three, I'm black. Four, my parents are religious. I mean, five, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, not just the South. I mean, it's very, it would just be so much more beneficial to just be Christian.
They keep
But
saying every time there's a presidential election, they're like, "Oh, Georgia might go blue." No,
I don't know why they said that. That was the most nonsensical thing.
I get all excited. I'm like, "Oh, Georgia."
Don't get excited. Don't let,
Yeah.
please don't do that to yourself.
So, well, that's interesting. So, as you watch people worship in church and stuff, you were very like it was odd to you. You didn't just think like, "Oh, this is how you do it," and I'm just gonna jump in. And it was more of a kind of a, "Huh, this is interesting." That kind of a,
The
yeah,
relationship I had with God, or whatever this perception of God I had, was set. Like, he was threatening, that was it. My worship of him wasn't going to change that. I didn't really have anything to ask him for. It was just kind of more of an authoritative position, like, it is, or authoritarian, excuse me.
hmm
Um, it is what I say it is, and that's what it is. I would get upset with God because it is what God says it is, and if that's, if this is something that's happening, means this is obviously something God's allowed. But
yeah,
it was never, or, thank you, God, for something positive going my way, because this is something you also allowed. But I never thought bowing to a God was beneficial, because I figured you're screwed either way. Why worship? I
yeah.
just,
He was just a very like you said authoritarian figure in your life, and you were obeying because you're supposed to obey, right?
yes, but I don't have to bow. Like I don't have to
Yeah,
I don't have to fall over in church and pretend like I'm passing out and all that nonsense. Like, I don't have to speak nonsensical languages or anything like that. It never
yeah.
appealed to me.
So you kind of went through childhood like this, and then so you get to a point where I think you said it was in college, but when can you identify a time when you begin to seriously doubt your beliefs and start to really question Christianity?
It was definitely college. I mean, that was, I'm glad I went away from Knoxville. I went to Middle Tennessee State. It's about 4 hour, well, depending on how many state troopers are on I-40 that day, 3.5 to 4 hours up the interstate. So I went away. I mean, of course there were people there, from not so much in my church, but Knoxville. There were tons of them. But that wasn't necessarily the issue. I just needed to get away from those Volunteers for Christ people, because, that was the name of the church ministry, because Tennessee Volunteers, Volunteers for Christ. I was just trying to get away from them because I wanted to do what I wanted to in college. And I already made one mistake telling those people that one of those girls, I had ended up sleeping with somebody, and she was like, "I'm going to tell your parents." And I was like, why? Why would you do that?
Yeah, why would you do that?
And somebody was like, "Well, if you didn't use a condom, it doesn't really count." And I'm like, that's not going to fly.
So she was saying it didn't count if you didn't use a condom?
It didn't count if you did use a condom.
Oh, so if you use sorry, I was misunderstanding. So she was thinking you use a condom, it's not really sex.
Yeah.
All right, well. But she was going to tell on you anyway.
Well, the girl, no, I'm sorry. This was a friend who told me.
Oh, okay.
Because I had expressed to her, I am fearful that this woman's going to tell this girl, this part of this college ministry.
Oh,
those
gotcha.
People.
Mm-hmm. That girl had found out.
I told her, I was like, yeah, I don't know why. I was dumb.
Confessed your sin or felt guilty?
Maybe. Yeah, that could have been it, because I was definitely, fresh out of the evangelical world going into college. Yeah.
So you opened up?
There was a lot for me to confess at that point in my life. But yeah, I did. And she was like, "I'm going to tell your dad and your mom." And I'm thinking, don't do that. This is exactly why I left Knoxville. So let me cut ties with you.
Was she your age?
She was older. She was part of those, that group of girls. Yeah, that were that used to mold and kind of oddly shape girls into being a little submissive.
So you were like what, like a freshman in college or something, or she was like an upperclassman?
Yeah, she was at UT, and I was kind of like calling back home and chatting with her. And
okay, so you kept in touch like as a mentor type thing.
Well, kind of as a friend. She was more of a friend than a mentor. Well,
okay.
I mean, I guess that's how my parents viewed her. She was a friend.
Okay. So she's a friend, but a very religious friend. And when you opened up to her, as friends do,
backfired.
Then it backfired. So she threatens to tell your parents, but then your other friend's like, "Oh, don't sweat it. It's cool. It doesn't count because you used a condom."
Yeah. That was stupid.
That's really funny. Yeah, like your parents would be like, "Oh, okay.
Oh, no, you're
good."
Fine. Yeah, that doesn't count at all.
Exactly. Yeah, that wouldn't have gone over well. So,
I don't think she did tell him.
Yeah, why would you do that? It's like mind your own business, right?
Yeah, that's why I left. So.
Okay, so that happened.
Yeah, so leaving that as an example of why I didn't stay in Knoxville.
You kind of cut that part of your life out at that point, or you were trying to kind of move away from it.
Yes.
Those types of people.
Right, because those people were they were everywhere. They would have been hard to avoid, unfortunately. Knoxville, I mean, UT's sizable, but I still probably would have been asked to go to church on Sundays, and I just needed to get out of that setting. And I was able to, and I went into an environment where I was able to kind of, I don't know, move away from it a little, and thankfully I did.
Any other moment where you remember kind of cutting ties with Christianity, or deciding, you know what, this isn't who I am anymore?
Well, Christianity is extremely judgmental, and I was always viewing myself as a more progressive person. Well, I wasn't as much as I would have thought I should have been, or thought I was, but embarrassingly enough, I did hold some very conservative views still, like maybe regarding gay marriage, and I feel horrible about that.
Hey, it's who you were, and we all have things that we look back on and aren't happy about or regret or something. So,
well, it's just not right. I mean, it's just not right. I shouldn't have been that way, but I ended up taking an African American Studies course in my freshman year, and the teacher was Yoruba, and his wife was Yoruba, and it was more of a segue.
You mentioned that. What is Yoruba? Because I don't actually know what that is.
It's a polytheistic, more animistic religion from Nigeria. It's also a tribe name as well. Usually when people hear the term Yoruba, they typically think of the tribe, but it's also a religion. And there's a pantheon that's similar to Greek mythology and Roman mythology, but with African gods,
Interesting.
and
Okay.
goddesses.
So you took a class, yeah, African American Studies, and you were learning about this, and so
It just seemed more inclusive and less judgmental than Christianity. It seemed less restrictive.
okay.
So it kind of set the stage for, I guess, Hinduism, Buddhism, meditation, chakras, things like that. So
Yeah.
eventually I moved into that. Because it was still, I'm an emotional person. So I spend a lot of time in my emotions, and it's just dealing with a lot of things, dealing with crap from, childhood that affects you still. I was just trying to find ways to manage it. So I knew I needed some sort of help beyond myself. That's what I thought. I don't, because there isn't. But the Christian God is just too brutal.
Yeah.
So I moved to more of a universal view of God, which is me having somewhat of, power, but still being able to enlist the help of the universe through some ridiculous suggestion made in a New Age video about like putting things in vortexes and yeah.
So was it your freshman year that you would have said that you no longer were a Christian?
Oh no, I was still a Christian, very much so.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was coming out of that.
Okay, and so you were still considering yourself a Christian when you were exploring Hinduism and Buddhism and stuff?
I would say I was still a Christian, but just in title. The people around me wouldn't agree, but I've considered myself a Christian.
Yeah, more,
And then
yeah, because that's how you were raised. That's just it's cultural. It's who your family is. It's who you are. It's just a title that you've been associating with yourself for your whole life.
exactly.
So you don't think any different of it. But
No.
why were your friends thinking you weren't Christian?
Well, my friends weren't to begin with, but well, they were, but they were more Christians like I were. It was why it was. It was my family that would disagree.
Okay, well, so they knew what you were going through. They knew you were kind of exploring Hinduism and some of these other religions.
They knew that, and they also knew I wasn't as conservative as they had raised me to be. I definitely, they didn't agree with alcohol consumption, drug consumption. Well, definitely not drug consumption. Marijuana is as brave as I've ever been. I
Uh-huh.
like natural things. I'm not going to trust anything a person makes, but yeah, sex. There are things they don't know about, but that's probably not going to stay that way. They can get over it as far as I'm concerned. But like, yeah, they, those things, they wouldn't have considered me a Christian at this time. But if I'm a Christian, if someone's a Christian, if they say they are, then they are. Everybody, there's different versions of everything.
Yeah.
So,
Well, was there a moment though that you was it in college, later in college that you basically thought of yourself, you no longer thought of yourself as a Christian then?
yeah, I went to the University of Memphis briefly for a program. I didn't like it. I was living in Memphis in this kind of rough area and was working at Denny's at the time as a waitress. It was one of the most adventurous times of my life. And I started to look into Hinduism, Buddhism, things like that more fervently. And I realized at that time I was not a Christian. I was about 24, or well, around that time, actually 22, 23, yeah,
Okay.
right after graduating.
Okay, so adventurous time in your life, and you're exploring these other religions, and you've graduated, and you're living on your own, I assume.
Yeah, I was living with a Chinese exchange student.
Is that is that something that you would keep secret that you weren't a Christian? Would you tell anybody, or did you tell anybody?
Oh, I had no problem with that. I don't think I was did a very good job hiding my disdain for Christianity.
Okay, so yeah, at that point, you pretty much were like, "This is not me. I'm not a Christian, and I'm open about it."
Right, like it just the way, yeah. I mean, I definitely had no problem with my parents knowing because of the way I was, they forced this on me, so I had no problem
Uh
with
huh.
that.
And being afraid of hell and stuff like that, did that hold you back? Did you feel like afraid to admit, "Hey, I'm not Christian anymore"? Was there anything that was worrying you about making that transition?
No, I was more afraid of my parents' reaction, my family's reaction, uncle, aunt reaction, people like that. I mean, when I move away from religion, I kind of Like if I'm not worried about the Christian God, I'm not worried about the Christian God's punishment.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an atheist. I don't have a fear
Uh-huh.
of hell. It's not
So
real.
they could see you kind of moving away from Christianity for a while, and they would have considered you non-Christian before you would even have considered yourself non-Christian. So they had kind of not warmed up to the idea, but they were getting used to the idea of you as a non-Christian for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, they did. When I told my mom I didn't believe anymore, she thought I was just, she was surprised.
Oh, so even though she saw you moving away from Christianity, they were still surprised by.
They were surprised by my mother was surprised by my atheism because she thought I still was something. Because like they
Oh.
knew I was like new age and had the chakra things and they knew about that, but they did not know I had just ditched it all.
And how much time went by from the time you were about 23, where you weren't a Christian anymore, until the time that you decided I'm an atheist or I'm an agnostic? Or
Probably about 5, 6
okay, so
years.
that's a lot of time that went by.
It did. Yeah, it was a lot of
And in
time. This
that,
was not a
hmm
quick decision.
yeah,
Or not a decision, but
process. It was not a quick
yeah, it was
process.
not a quick process at all.
And it was in
Um,
that 5 or 6 years that you were really discovering these different like New Age beliefs, and you were kind of playing around with that.
yes, that's some weird
That was
stuff.
like your transition from Christian to atheist, was like these other religions or beliefs you were kind of exploring. What was appealing about the chakras and what was appealing about the crystals and stuff like that to you at that time?
It was not restrictive. Anybody could use them. It was not, you're bad. It wasn't like judgmental or punitive like religion. They were supposed to help you, like literally supposed to uplift and help you. The universe wasn't a terrifying thing anymore. It was something you could control and is wanting to give you things you want. You just have to put it into the universe and make a vision board and go volunteer. I mean, it just seemed more
Positive?
it seemed more positive. Yeah, that's a good word.
You were saying inclusive. You were going to say inclusive.
Yes, definitely.
I can see why that would
People,
be appealing to someone who came from a very strict religious background.
yes. Also, too, people who are it seems like they have it together. I meditate. I do yoga. I eat kale and my chakras are aligned and, all that. People don't have it together. It doesn't matter who they are, what their background is. And when I realized that, especially when I found out about Buddhists being just awful people, I think that just did it for me. I was like, everyone's shit.
What did you find
So
out? Was there a certain person that you knew that did something, or?
I knew about a woman at the spiritual center for living, where I was, who was saying she was Buddhist, and they had divided and were backstabbing each other and being horrible to each other. And I also know about the certain wars that were taking place in the East, and also I was, oh, gosh, I was watching something and like a Buddhist monk punch someone. I don't remember, but
That's
they are
really funny.
not.
I don't think I've ever seen a Buddhist monk throw a punch.
I may be wrong. What was I watching? Hmm.
Was it Jerry Springer?
No,
Okay.
I don't know. Was there a Buddhist monk on Jerry Springer?
I don't know.
Jerry
Jerry
Springer.
Springer had
It's like
weird stuff, so I was just thinking maybe it was on some crazy show like that.
no, it was a show that was recounting things that were on video, like things not like people acting funny, but just for the sake of it. No, it was something had occurred that had made even these religions, all that are behind these things are people,
Yeah.
just afraid, scared, desperate, fearful,
People looking for
pe-
answers, whatever. They're just human,
yeah,
right?
that's it. And religion is just an or just a projection
Yeah.
of your insecurities. And the more fervent your religious belief, the more insecure you feel. The insecure you feel, I believe. So when somebody is religious, it automatically puts me on the defense, or not like religious. I'm sorry. Let me specify that. Not if people are just religious, because people are religious and that's fine. Not fine, but not for me, but like just in their daily interaction. But like if somebody like Tim Tebow or someone is very, very like, this is who I am. I'm religious and you should like me because of this, or I'm supposed to be viewed positively for this reason, it does make me suspicious. Not just because people are religious, that doesn't make me suspicious. But if they put themselves in the spotlight because of it, I don't know if you remember Tim Tebow,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I would have,
People like that.
yeah, I didn't, Tim, when I was playing high school football, I wasn't, Tim Tebow wasn't around, but that's the kind of football player I would have idolized back in the day. A conservative Christian who was open about their faith. Yeah.
Yeah, see that to me that just sends off warning bells for
Mhm.
me, because being religious, people are religious because they're looking for something personal, I believe, and when they start to use it for what, if they try to use it in a way to get an advantage over somebody, it makes me suspicious of them.
Mm, yeah. How do you
I
think,
feel
do you think Tim
manipulative.
Tebow was using his religion to get an advantage in some way?
It seemed that way to me, yes, because he wanted people to view him a positive way. I think anybody who
Okay.
does something like that, and because
It's a
it's normal
persona.
to
It's his image. It's his like reputation. He's trying to build kind of a persona or whatever.
yes,
Yeah.
right, because it's normal to assume, especially in the U.S., that somebody's religious. Like that's probably you're religious. But when you start to put your religion on blast for all to see 24/7, it makes me wonder why.
Yeah.
Like, what are you hiding? What do you feel so badly about that you have to use this method of gaining approval? Because it's such a guilt-ridden, emotional method. Like, I'm going for the very core of how you view yourself. I'm aligning myself with you in a way that it has really nothing to do with the value of who I am as a person, but who I'm projecting myself to be. It just seems disingenuous to me.
Yeah. I think, and I don't know if, I mean, maybe he and people like him know what they're doing, know what they're hiding, or
Their
something.
publicist knows.
Well, probably, yeah. I think sometimes though that I think it might be just what they think they should be doing. Like they think they should be giving God credit because he's done good things for them, so they have to show that they're grateful. Do you think that's true or
It could be, but I would wonder why they feel that they have to show to us and
yeah,
everybody else
right.
on international television and kneeling to pray and putting verses on your face. I mean, we get it. I mean, we do. Things like that, they make me suspicious.
So you went, you kind of at some point like you were saying you saw, Buddhists and maybe other religions doing things that weren't very respectful, weren't very nice, weren't very good. And so it kind of the it was maybe disillusioning or something, and it made you realize, yeah, religion's not for me. So did you consider yourself agnostic at that point or around that time?
Um, it wasn't necessarily the at that point religion died, but not this perception of maybe something supernatural.
Uh-huh.
Um, I hmm. I don't necessarily, I'm not suspicious, but there are certain things that make me nervous. Not used to make me nervous. Now they don't necessarily make
Uh-huh.
me nervous. But you know, I would say like I didn't trust humans. I wasn't really working with them. But then I kind of gravitated towards, okay, so what is the thing that people are trying to, what is this universal thing people are trying to relate to? Like there may still be something more underlying, something supernatural, even though humans are complete assholes.
Yeah.
That type of thing. Um,
It was very gradual for you.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
The lack of God thing that came. Huh, this is really. I don't know if this is sad,
It's okay. Just
but
yeah.
um, there was something I used to hate doing because I always used to be afraid that research would reveal my parents as correct. I used to
Oh.
hate like listening to Christian apologists. I laugh about it now, but at the time I was really concerned that investigation may result in seeing my parents and my upbringing as correct, and maybe I should be buying into this, and I
And this you were feeling this way after you kind of left religion behind.
yes, I
Wow. So
did.
yeah, so those were the lingering doubts, like the things you were holding on to, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe these apologists kind of know something, and if yeah, there's part of you that's kind of curious about that, but then there's the other part of you that's like, no, 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 I don't even want to go there because maybe they're right.
Yeah, because if they're right, I'm screwed because I can't.
Because then you got to go.
Christianity.
No, finish what you're going to say. You got to go back to that, is what I was going to say.
I would have to go back because if I'm one of those honest people, if it's not real, it's not real. I can't. I understand. See, a lot of my life has been spent running from the truth because it's hard for me to deny it, so I just try to avoid it. So I'm one of those people who, when something's presented to me as evidential, I mean, it's just what it is. And if Christianity is true, it's true. I mean, that's just what it is.
Mhm.
It's just the evidence isn't there. I mean, I'm with it. I mean, if you can demonstrate, I mean, I'm there. Because it's silly to not. I just feel like it's worth more to me to be truthful than it is to be comfortable.
Right.
So I have no problem if Christianity's whatever, any religion is, proven.
Hmm.
I'm there because I like evidence.
Yeah. So
Um,
what'd you do then when you were having these doubts? Did you eventually start to expose yourself to some of these apologists and listen to what they're?
I did. Whenever I go to people's houses, whenever I talk to my parents, we're praying for you.
Oh, I know.
God told me to, God put this on my heart for you. Jesus said when you're ready, he's here. Things like that are coming at me
Uh,
from different directions all the time.
hmm.
So I'm kind of like, let me just go ahead. But what if they're right? Because if they're right, oh my gosh, there's like, it just seemed weird.
Yeah.
Like if this was right, what else is crazy? What else crazy is right? But the thing that it's mortifying because it's such a dumb example, but the Kinham Bill Nye debate
Uh-huh.
was the first thing I watched. I
Oh.
was afraid that there might be evidence provided for the creation story. There wasn't any.
And that,
um,
yeah. And that wasn't
None
that
at
long
all.
ago, right? I mean,
No, that was 4 years.
okay. Not super long ago. I mean, that's just yeah, so even 4 years ago you were still kind of looking to see if there was anything that might make sense about Christianity.
Yes, I was. What it did for me was that it showed me that this isn't looking as solid as it's been presented to be. That was a very big thing for me because I was able to look at it and go, he's really not presenting any arguments. This is starting to sound like the stuff that I grew up with. Just do this because God said it, and then down the hierarchy. Not a lot of reasons being provided. And then I started to look at reasons and started to look at evidence. And I was really, really I'm very intrigued by biology, genetics. I wish I had gone to school for science, like a hard science. But I mean, my gift is with human interaction. And when I'm like in a more of a, like right now I'm answering questions, and that's why I like doing podcasts because I usually ask a lot of questions. Like if you look at my Twitter feed, you'll see I'm usually like, hey, tell me more, or. But I like to, I mean, I think my upbringing is so crazy and so wacky, and I feel kind of, this is something I'm very, very kind of interested in presenting, so I don't mind talking about it.
As far as the apologist thing goes, so you watched that debate. Did you watch any other? Did you I guess read any Christian apologists or watch any other debates? Was there anything else at that time that you tried to expose yourself to, or was it like you saw Ken Ham and you're like, yeah, I'm done?
No, that would not have been a good way to go about making a decision, to watch that one awful display and then draw a conclusion.
Uh-huh.
I watched a few others, of course, the standards. Of course, when you first start looking for atheism, there are staples that come up: Dawkins, Dennett, Harris, Hitchens.
Mm-hmm.
I fell in love with Matt Dillahunty. I mean, he doesn't know how much I love him. I met him and freaked, and he just wasn't amused. And because I just think he's the greatest. I just love how honest he is. That is what I appreciate about him, his honesty. And people need to be more honest. The offense, are you offended by me telling you that what you believe is bullshit? Okay. Well, it's the truth. You're going to have to grow up. It's time to deal with things. Your life is better off when you accept things as they are. there. And I like that he's brave enough and consistent enough and strong enough and fearless enough to say that. And I really appreciate him a lot. So the Atheist Experience definitely obviously came across my path, and I love that show. Tracy Harris, I would love to meet her.
I actually, believe it or not, I'm not familiar with who she is. And I don't know that I've
What?
ever listened. I know who Matt Dillahunty is, but I've never
Yes, of
listened to,
course.
it's called the Atheist Experience podcast.
Yes, the Atheist Experience. It's yes. They have they've been on for years in Austin, Texas, I believe over 20. They kind of came out of the atheist community of Austin. It's a community I believe was started by Madeline O'Hare
Oh, okay.
years ago, before her death. And they started a public access show, and it kind of evolved from there.
Oh,
And it's a call-in show, so people will call in and say things that are very interesting, and there's usually two of them, but in the beginning there were several, and then kind of narrowed it down to two, co-host and a host.
uh-huh.
And they will have people call in and say, different things. And the topics of discussion, they range from fundamental religion to abstract topics like philosophy and just oh goodness, of course, biology. And people want to talk to them about science, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, we're not scientists. And but that's an excellent show, and I will plug the hell out of that show.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you mentioned it. I always ask for resources at the end, but that's going to be one I'll definitely make sure it makes it into the show notes.
Yes, the Atheist Experience. Anything Matt Dillahunty does. Finally got to meet him this year. Finally.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, he's awesome. But yeah, I kind of started with those things and the arguments. I mean, I was reading. I do like to read. I do like biology a lot. I listen to lectures on YouTube by Dr. Robert Sapolsky, Dr. Paul Bloom, um, Shelley Keegan, people like that. I want to understand the world better, so the more I listen to them, because the reason people are religious or they attribute the supernatural to stuff is because they just don't get it. The more you understand, the less you attribute God to. The more you understand, the less you feel the need to attribute God to, I'd say. Because God is just a catch-all.
Yeah.
I don't know, so God, or, this is something I can't explain, so it was a ghost or supernatural, or the picture fell off the wall. It was Aunt Lucy, or,
Yeah.
no, well, the more you understand about the world, the less often you know, can gravitate towards those explanations. So I just listen to a lot of stuff, really. There's a lot of free resources.
Yeah, and those are great. So, yeah, after the Ken Ham debate, were there other Christians you listened to?
The standards, Turek, Craig,
Oh,
uh,
okay. Yeah.
those the individuals that called into the Atheist Experience, of course, my own family. There was always kind of apologetics in my life. The people I work with, the people I went to school with at the
So you were,
time.
yeah, you
Well,
were hearing it all over the place, it sounds like, really.
that may have been no. I was out of school when this happened.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. So the people I worked with, the people I did go to, I did do coaching. I'm a certified professional coach as well. So those people in those classes were religious, more on the New Age side of things. Um, but yeah, I did. I listened to some podcast debates, things like that. I heard the arguments. I did read the Bible again. Oh no, again, I'm lying. I didn't read the whole thing to begin with. I read it cover to cover.
You gave it a chance again, basically, by starting to read it. And you read it cover to cover?
I
You,
did.
you wouldn't
Uh,
believe, I mean, you would believe because you probably know. There are so many atheists that I've talked to that have done that, gone cover to
mhm.
cover. And as a Christian, I don't think Christians, a lot of them would never guess that.
Right. It shocks me when they're like, "Do you understand the idea of salvation?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." Like I can explain Christianity to Christians better than Christians, and then they just don't. But automatically, because I'm an atheist, they discount what I'm saying,
Right.
and it's like I get it. I know, like my father, he will still explain religion to me, and like he has this like I've never heard it. I'm
Yeah.
like, Dad, I get it. Like when we would talk about We don't talk about it. It comes up we try to avoid it. But my father's a debater, and I am too, and a
Oh,
talker.
interesting.
So we will discuss it, and other people will try to change the subject because they know it could turn into heated discussion. But it's the same thing, like, no, here's the idea. When Jesus came to earth, it was so he could be the perfect sacrifice. I'm like, if you don't stop explaining this nonsense to me, I get it. It's wrong. It's fake. Like, it's still fake.
You're like, no, I
Explaining
understand the words that came out of your mouth. I just don't believe it's true.
exactly. Like, I got it. I know it. Like, oh, Jesus was, so he came because he was the perfect sacrifice. Well, I'm done. I mean, I'm won over.
Sign me up.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I got it. Just, it's weird.
So it was watching all of those debates and all that. Basically, you were doing research. You were studying up on kind of the different arguments for and against Christianity, and it was in that process that it kind of solidified that you were an atheist.
Yes, that and doing just some basic, like, I'm very visual. I like to watch illustrations of things rather than listen to descriptions of them.
Okay.
So I also would watch videos like Stated Clearly, there's definitions and explanations for evolution on there. They're wonderful. They're animated and they're very quick. Videos about, I think the longest maybe 10 minutes, but don't quote me on
And
that.
it's
But
called Stated Clearly.
Stated
Is it
Clearly.
a TV show or a...
It's a YouTube series, and they have videos on natural selection, evolution, oh my gosh, molecular genetics. They have all kinds of things. It's
Cool.
great, and it's animated. I like Crash Course, love Crash Course, because they have a lot of quick explanations for scientific concepts, historical concepts. Like, they are really great. Of course, again, the free lectures, Yale, Stanford, Harvard. I mean, you can get access to a lot of stuff. There is no reason for you to say that there are trees because of God. That's stupid. Like, that is nonsensical. You can easily, I mean, on your way to work, while you're working out, while you're changing diapers, cooking, you can put on a lecture. You can listen to like tons of videos. It's silly to me. Like, I just don't get it. So those things, I mean, the debates, seeing the Christians falter and flounder and not be able to provide anything except, well, you can't prove it, disprove it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, learning more about the natural environment, it's just, I can't understand it. It's a shocking thing.
Yeah, no, people can educate themselves now. I mean, it's really easy. The internet and YouTube and all of these resources people have to be able to educate themselves. They don't need to go to college and get a doctorate in religious studies. They have a lot of that information at their fingertips.
Yeah, I mean, why would you worship something and don't even get it? Like, when I try to tell my parents where things, my dad, I told him, well, I was telling him Mediterranean religions, the Fertile Crescent, we've got, Zoroastrianism and their influence, and I'm telling him about all this stuff, and he's just like, well, it led to Jesus, so that's how I interpret it, and that's what makes it right. I'm like, that's dumb. And Jesus led to Allah. So does that mean, I mean, well, yeah. Does that mean Allah's correct? They're like the same things that they say, they're dumb. It's just, and my dad's so smart and I don't get it. Like, I tell him, I'm like, you are really smart. And he told me he believed in demons. And I was just like, but you're one of the smartest people I know. He's like, well, there are things you can see and things you can't. I'm like, okay, can't see it. How do you know that's, anyway.
So when you said earlier you told your mom, was she the first person that you told you were atheist?
Oh, no. There were plenty of people who knew previously.
Or maybe I should say first person in your family. Did it just come up randomly, or were you like, I need to tell mom?
It came up because she's always she's always giving people like religious lessons, and she was again saying something about, God da 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 da, and God did this and God says this, and I was like, Mom, I don't believe in that. And she was like, what? And it was very surprising to her. And I just thought it was the right opportunity because it's constant.
Mm-hmm.
It's constant. And I just had to assert, like, I'm not there anymore. I don't even, I don't believe it.
And what did she say when you told her?
she said, I don't, I'm surprised that you don't believe in anything anymore. I thought that you believed in something. I just thought you weren't Christian. It was basically the gist of what she said. My dad at one point told me he just wanted me to be something. He didn't care if it was apostolic, Episcopalian. He just wanted me to be something. And I was like, that's weird. Okay.
Just some version of Christianity, or
Yes,
okay,
some version of Christianity,
yeah.
definitely. Sometimes he'd be like, "What are you today, Muslim? What are you today?" And they weren't thrilled, but yeah, I mean that's my story, and
Hmm.
it really, religion is just a very interesting thing to me. It's weird.
Yeah, especially when you're on the other side of it and you look back, it's like, what? I believe that.
Anybody believes it.
Hmm.
Like just Google. It's just Google. 5 minutes. Christianity history. Simple. You'll find all these answers. And then you can say, wait a minute, if that's bullshit, then what's that? That's bullshit too. Oh my goodness, look at all this bullshit. And then you can realize you believe bullshit, and then you can stop. And then you can it doesn't even matter. Christianity, Islam, it doesn't matter. Hinduism, just research the religion you believe,
Yeah.
because you're making decisions. You interpret yourself, your world, through this filter, and the filter is not accurate. It's just not the right way to interpret the world, and people are suffering because of religion, and it's just ridiculous, and it needs to stop.
Do the Christians in your life, do they misunderstand why you're not a Christian? The reason?
Yeah, they think it's something like maybe I don't know. We really don't talk about it because
Hmm.
I will tell them very, very honestly, I think that's wrong. You need, these are not what the facts say. So they avoid it. It's kind of like one of those things, like the reason Christians or someone who's religious or devoutly religious doesn't do research. It's, to avoid even thinking of going, deviating from their way of thinking. So my family, like, they don't really address religion with me.
So, because they don't really want to talk about it, do you know, or do you have an idea of why they think that you're not a Christian anymore?
Generically, the number one thing I hear is I'm still looking for something, which is weird. I don't know what I'd be looking for. And even if I was looking for something, there is no way in hell the Christian God is the answer for it. Because that's just crazy. I mean,
Yeah, so Christians might think that you're like still searching for some kind of spiritual fulfillment or something like that.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah. But if I was going to be religious, it certainly would be. I mean, listen, if the Christian God was demonstrated to exist, I'd believe in him, but I wouldn't be Christian. No way. I mean, there's just no way. The violence, the hatred, the judgment, the mistreatment, it's just not right. I mean, people can be so much better. They deserve better. We deserve better. I mean, humanity deserves better. You are not bad. You are not broken. You are not sick, ill, because you're human. You
Hmm.
are human. You didn't, it's just nonsensical. You don't need anybody to save you. You're excellent the way you are. And
Hmm.
Christianity is religion toxic. Islam toxic. The way people are just using this as a justification just to see themselves as shit, to see others as shit, and then as a result we treat our planet like shit. It's just nonsensical for us to have to tell religious people, no honey, God's not coming back. Our senators in this country, God, I believe God's coming back, and global climate change isn't going to fuck with God's planet. Are you? No, 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 no. This person's making choices for all of us. We need to squash this. This is a problem, and it's just people ask me on Twitter, why do you care what I believe? Because you make choices based on your belief, and your choices fuck with me. Your choices fuck with my future like the generations that are coming down the pike. My kids, if I choose to have them, they're going to be on this planet with your children, and your children are going to believe the same crazy nonsense that you do, and they're going to be affecting my children, and it just cannot be.
Yeah, in America, I think well, maybe people in general, have an illusion of being independent when really we all really impact each other. You know.
Yes, we live here together. We are on this planet together. There's no God coming to save us. There's nothing happening after death you need to be working for. What you need to be doing right now is you need to be maximizing the, the opportunities for knowledge, to pass on knowledge to the next generation, because the only way we're to the point where we are with medicine, technology, et cetera, is because people have worked hard to learn all they can about this planet and to pass on this knowledge. And just think of what we could do with the resources if people would just focus on science, progression, take all of this money out they're giving to the church and give it to a purpose. I mean, we don't, the community aspect, we can form these things without religion.
Yeah.
We can form homeless shelters. We can do this stuff. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent for secular humanism. That's the way to live. That's the way to be.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have anything else but each other, and that's unfortunate, but that's what it is.
I have a handful of final questions that I just want to get your reflections on and your thoughts on. When you think back to, the early years, when you were younger and being raised Christian, very strict Christian home, and even though you didn't necessarily buy into all the doctrine, what you used to be a part of as a Christian and what you used to believe is very different from who you are and what you believe now. What about you stayed the same from the time you were young until now?
My empathy. I don't know if there's a lesion in my amygdala. I don't understand what it is, but I am very empathetic. I am extremely caring. Ever since I was a child, I would try so hard to do for others. I don't know why. I think it doesn't serve me all the time, because I'm giving resources or consideration when I probably should be focused more on taking care of myself. And that sounds. It's just I care. I empathize with the human condition. Being a human is a fucked up experience. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, you are stuck on this planet. You're observing things around you that seem to be operating on their own. Things aren't necessarily, and you're in a position to observe them, to reason about it, to make these considerations. And you're trying to understand your environment as best you can, but there's a lot of gaps in your understanding based on your limitation and knowledge, but there's a way to understand it. You're struggling. And it's just like, what the hell is happening here? You've got these people that are emotionally influencing you, all this stuff happening. And on top of all of that, you've got these demands of society. You've got capitalism forcing you kind of into this role of maybe spending your time, in a cubicle or something like that. This amazing existence where things aren't necessarily making sense, and try to find out how it makes sense. So you're kind of stuck here with not a lot of answers is kind of the point I'm making.
Yeah.
And people go to religion because of that. And if the fear of the not having the answers is the problem, then let's just find answers. And
then if we struggle as humans through these experiences that we have, just because life is hard and life is like you said, life's fucked up sometimes.
It is.
The empathy piece is really important, like you were saying. To be empathetic, you didn't lose that when you became an atheist.
No, it amplified it. Understanding the way things work a little bit better. It just, you can see where people are misconstruing life and where it hurts them. And one thing that really bothers me, and I keep bringing this up, is this whole issue of abortion, gay marriage, teaching certain ideas in school, the way transsexuals are treated, or transgendered, it's just things like that. The way, certain demographics are treated based on views that are held in the Bible. Like when I was told about being African American was I was cursed because Ham looked at Noah naked, when he was, after he got drunk and was laid out naked. And because those were, Ham went on, supposedly his descendants founded Canaan. So we were cursed. Nonsense like that, things like that. Those are harmful views.
Yeah.
And then of course not just Christianity, but there are very restrictive views in Islam. Those are the two biggest ones. So I talk about them. Obviously Christianity affected me more, so I talk about that. But we're limiting ourselves, and I mean, just big time. Humans could be so much better, I believe, without it. And or if it was at least curbed to the point of being as vague as maybe a new age type thing, that doesn't really bother me.
Right.
I don't care if you like chakras. People who like chakras aren't voting,
Mm,
to take away people's rights typically.
yeah.
That's not really, I don't care about that. But I mean, in that case, where religion is causing, or amplifying bigoted views, we need to cut religion, but we also need to work as humans to be more empathetic towards each other in general.
Yeah.
Humanity, we are the top intellectuals on this planet. It is our job to watch out for the planet, to watch out for each other, to watch out for other species. And I feel like religion is the absolute antithesis of that.
Mm-hmm.
It just, it fosters division. It is labeling people to the point where it's calling them dependent, worthless, especially Christianity. It's just so anti-human. There's no love. It's weird. It's, love others, blah blah blah. Okay, we'll take away their rights and stuff like that. That's stupid.
It's
I
not
mean,
loving,
it's
yeah.
just, that's not love. So, it's just, it's scary because it's very easily to manipulate people with it. I see how much it affects people. It's a very odd thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to find out what people are actually looking for, because it definitely, religion plays a role. It fills a need. And if we can just find out what that is and find a way to kind of strip away the nonsense and just fulfill the need for humans without it, I think we'd be very, very much better off just
As a
as a species.
species, yeah.
Yeah.
When you think back on the Christian you, what do you think about that person now?
She's more empowered.
Or what do you think about?
Like
Okay, she
she's
was less empowered. If you're thinking back on that person, right?
Yeah, she was that poor thing.
In
It's just,
in what ways?
I feel, well, I mean, I'm responsible for my life. I mean, I don't have to worry about a God not liking me or trying to suck up to a God, or I don't really have to feel any kind of certain way about my parents' authority because it's, this natural dispensation placed in, there by God. I mean, I don't feel the need to, I mean, like, I can call them on their net, like the shit that they've done in
Mm-hmm.
the past that was fucked up. Like, people don't want to, oh, they tried. Yeah, they tried, but the shit they did was fucked. It's not, I love them to death. My family is they're the most important people in the world to me. But I am happy, happy, and it is so empowering to tell them when they're wrong. And it is so empowering to be able to say, you did this wrong, you're doing this wrong. And because I know that people in my family want to foster better relationships, especially the older three who went through the more evangelical,
Mm-hmm.
fundamental upbringing, there's some screwed up stuff happening there. And I will go into detail about it because I don't want to out my family's laundry like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And
that's cool.
we all have crazy things happening, but there's direct negative effects from the things that took place in the past and some of the things that are taking place now. And I have no problem because it's affecting people's happiness, their relationships, big parts of their life that, you know, need help. And
Yeah.
I think it's good to be in a position where I can say, hey, we need to work on this together, or you two need to get this together. Things like that. And it wasn't always like that. And I do credit my mom with that a lot because she's always been very, despite the discord, she's always tried the hardest to keep everybody kind of unified, even though she's been the cause of a lot of discord lately.
Mm-hmm.
But she has tried to do that, and she's human too, so she's going to be a problem at times. But I do feel that I am in a more of a position to tell them, and others too. This is something, when something needs to be worked on, I feel more comfortable saying
Yeah,
it.
more empowered to be able to express yourself and stand up for the things you believe in now.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I hope the things that I believe are demonstrable. I don't ever want to tell somebody, think the way I think and leave it at that. The things that I feel very strongly about, I can demonstrate where they're beneficial. I can demonstrate how they'd be better than the alternative, like education. We need to definitely make sure people are educated in what's actually going on.
Yeah.
This evolution versus creationism nonsense, there is no versus, it's evolution.
Yeah.
That's done. As far as people being treated a certain way, it's just homosexuals, it's natural. It's just there's nothing to say. My father, oh, you can't tell him that, but it's stupid. It's natural. You can't help it. What are you going to do? I mean, it's really stupid to mistreat somebody for something that they literally cannot help.
Yeah.
Just because it makes you uncomfortable. Like, you get over it. I mean, seriously. It's just the most frustrating thing. So, I mean, things like that.
Well,
I'd say those are
yeah, and
really
I
big
think you kind of
things.
hit on this. The next question that I ask is, what do you like best about being an atheist? Is there one thing that you could think of all? You've mentioned a few, but is there one thing that kind of stands out?
Being responsible for my own life is wonderful. When I want to, like, when I want to know something, or if I feel like I need to overcome something, I can look to myself and I can control myself. And that's the best thing about it. I can't control a God. Praying to a God automatically takes all of my control away from me, or at least I pretend it does when
Yeah.
people do that.
Christians
Um,
do. Yeah, they kind of.
yeah, everybody, please help. I mean, like,
Right.
do what you direct your energy outwards, kind of towards the people around you, not towards something that's not real.
Yeah.
um
You're,
there are a lot of resources out there. You can do anything. I mean, well, there are limitations, but if you can find ways to do what you
but
need.
it kind of goes along with the empowerment thing you were saying. Like, as an atheist, you are more empowered to take control of your life, and you're not dependent on a supernatural being to do things for you.
Or the perception or the expectation of a supernatural being.
Right.
Because that supernatural being isn't doing for anything for anybody, because it's not real. Anything anybody's ever done has been out of their own discipline and their hard work, and that should be honored, I think.
Yeah.
It's very insulting to me when someone says, "Oh, God helped you with that. Congratulations, praise God." No, I did it. I mean, if God's involved, why the hell did I have to work so hard?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
that's how I
sad in a
think.
way. Yeah, they're giving credit to something that's not there, and they're taking away credit that they deserve for their hard work and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And others too,
Yeah, and
that
other
others
people.
deserve. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's upsetting for me. I don't like to see that.
Well, name one thing, or can you think of something that you've learned or experienced that you may not have if you stayed a Christian?
I can make my life better on my own. I feel either I would not have learned it or would have had a much more difficult time figuring that out.
Yeah, I'm sensing this empowerment themes kind of carrying through, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I
that's
felt like there was a
important.
lot of power taken away. Yeah, it is. And I want others to feel that way. It's really, you definitely don't have control over everything. You don't. I'm a big fan of 1984. It's my favorite book. Winston Smith, oh wow, my hero, because he really fought to have control. And in the end, he lost. And I respect that. He lost. And he fought for his mind as much as he could. Um, and I think his failure, or his succumbing to Big Brother and all of that, is a statement to how little control we actually have, but you can still try. He tried. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's the
you can do
sometimes.
so much.
Yeah, sometimes it's the point of like giving it your best effort and just, trying to get through doing the right thing, doing the thing that you know you should do, taking control of your own life, your own thoughts. That's
Yes,
important just of in and of itself.
that's the control of your own thoughts. That's what it is. That's what I respect about that character, because it was a mental independence is what he was seeking.
Hmm.
And he, in the midst of all around him, in the negative reinforcement and the knowing that death was actually the result in some form, he wanted so badly to have his own thoughts, and just the few cubic centimeters inside the skull, that's the only thing that's your own, is what Orwell says in that book. And I really think him fighting for that empowerment, and fighting for that with Julia is something that is to be respected. And I in the face of maybe being told you're wrong, and in the face of things definitely, like society
Hmm.
definitely not agreeing with you, especially in the United States, I'd say, because my views are not popular, but I really really believe it's worth it to stay true to logic and reason, because those are the things that have led to where we are. That's how we can do this right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's what led us both to this place in our life, where we've, you know, become atheists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is how the technology we have to be able to do the podcast,
No,
all
that's
of
true.
this. That's science.
What do you think about your deconversion? Well, when you think back on your deconversion, kind of that whole process, what are you most proud of in your own life?
Most people are religious. Most people who look like me are religious. Most people with my upbringing are religious. I'm not. That's what I'm most proud of.
That's cool. It's unique.
Yeah.
It's you. It's who you are.
Yeah. And on top of that, it's also I'm right. I'm right. It's I would rather I just I feel lucky. Not privileged, just lucky. Because I mean, I guess with great irony, I say, there but for the grace of God go I.
Right. Well, it's like everything was working against you in a sense with your culture and just with your upbringing and everything. I mean, it's just all working to form you into something that everybody else kind of is, and you were able to fight back. And like the fish swimming against the tide, or against the not the tide, against the current. That's what I meant to
Yeah,
say.
that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Right.
I like that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool.
I feel lucky. Just lucky. Life's just been
Yeah,
better.
because you never know. I mean, like, do you think there's any scenario in which you wouldn't have become an atheist?
Sure, probably any other scenario, honestly.
You don't think that you would have found your way eventually, because you seem like a very, skeptic Nikki. You seem very, you ask questions and you think things through and you kind of challenge those things. Do you think that I mean, it's your perception. I'm not trying to like sway you one way or the other, but
No.
I just wonder, it's something I've thought about in my own life. Like, is there a scenario where I just would have stayed a Christian, or is this inside of me? Is this something that's like innately me, or is this innately you? And would you have found your way to a more rational kind of viewpoint anyway?
Well, there's a lot of different factors that go into who I am, genetic and otherwise, nature versus nurture. And, sometimes I wonder if my parents, I mean, obviously I'd be a completely different person if I didn't have the upbringing I did, all of that. All things being equal and me being who I am, um, just, yeah, I would have eventually gotten to it because it just seems, it makes sense. It just doesn't.
Hmm.
And when people hear this, they're gonna think she is very brash. She's abrasive towards religion, and I am. The reason is, and this is just how things are for me. If they don't make sense, I can't. If I can't root it to something that's logical, if it's just kind of like as a kid watching people kind of sway their arms, it just seemed odd. It
Hmm.
just, if something behaviorally seems odd to me, or if people are doing things that are weird, it's very hard for me to get on with it. And then of course there is the issue of, well, maybe they don't see that as weird. Okay. Okay. I just find, and I guess that's what intrigues me about religion, is I really want to know the appeal. I want to know why it's not. I have to understand why it's so ubiquitous, and
Yeah.
it's just I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question. I probably went off on another
Oh
tangent,
no,
but
you're good. Well, is there anything that we haven't discussed that you wanted to bring up or share?
no, just I appreciate the opportunity. Follow me, Skeptic Nikki. I do. Um, I realized a very interesting Twitter analytics is really helpful. A lot of my followers are male, and I appreciate that a lot. I guess that I do like kind of more comic book. I do have a nerdy side, and I guess the atheism side, but is very popular with men. But my goal definitely would be to bring more women out of religion. Of course, women are statistically more religious. It makes more sense. Women are subjugated more. They feel less power. They have less influence overall. So they tend to be more religious. But I would love to get some ladies, gravitating towards religion because that's who children listen to. That's who's raising kids. So
That's who
we get
votes.
some more religious mamas out there. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Or non-religious mamas out there. We could, definitely have a bigger influence on the next generation. But I mean, I really appreciate my followers. You guys are so great. I really appreciate it. I want to do more for for them. That's why I want to start the blog, because people
Yeah.
are dealing with stuff and I want to help. And that's just my goal. I want to help. I would probably be the most abrasive towards religion, but I'm not abrasive towards, it's more like hate the belief, love the believer type thing.
Yeah. That's funny. Like, hate the sin, love the sinner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's really funny.
Um, it is, because I love people. I care a lot. But I really don't have a lot of tolerance for religious belief, because I expect more from humans. I really do. We've made it so far. We've done so much. There's just no reason for it. We're
Yeah.
strong enough. We can take it. We just got to find a way to do that. And we got to be able to move away from these old ways of thinking, I think. I really believe we can do that. And, well,
Yeah.
definitely not my generation, but I'd like to plant some
Well, hey,
seeds.
you never know.
Uh, you never,
You never know,
if
Nikki. You never know. Um,
you really.
so I started this podcast for the recently deconverted Christian. What encouragement or piece of guidance can you give that person?
First of all, oh, congratulations, you're amazing. You are incredible. If you are a person who used to be religious and now you are not, nice work. You have fought the that weird thing that seems to grab others so easily. You've come out of it. Use this as an opportunity to become genius. Now that you're in control of your own life, you can start to research and learn everything that you want, everything that you can. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be biology or science or anything. Just learn whatever you're doing in your life. You've got the power to become the absolute best at it. You don't have to worry about a God anymore. And there's going to be shit that scares you. You're still going to have questions. You're still going to be scared. You're still going to have those nights when you're crying, terrified, don't know what to do, begging for help, wishing there was a God, and you're going to have to deal with that. And it's going to suck, but you can make it out. And you can do that by researching and learning as much about your situation as possible. You don't need the idea of a God. You don't. You don't need it. And you realize that, and you should be commended. And follow me. That's also another good piece of advice. I tweet out a lot of stuff about religion, but I enjoy the subject matter. That's what my Twitter page is about. But overall, congrats. You deserve so much praise. Give yourself a pat on the back.
That's cool.
You're exceptional. I mean, that's how I feel about it.
That's awesome.
Because most of the world's religious, and you're the I guess saving grace.
I know all these religious terms that are stuck in our head.
I know.
Yeah.
There's just that's what I still say, bless your heart. But I try not to say bless you. But I mean, you grow up in freaking Tennessee.
Well, what are you gonna do, right? It's the water you're swimming in.
Yeah, it's just what you're
It's just,
that's a good one.
yeah, I've heard.
I like
Yeah,
that.
I've heard that from other people. What are one or two resources you would recommend for someone who is deconverting? Do you have a favorite one or two?
Atheist Experience podcast. First of all, for those questions you have about religion, those little questions that you're going to be asked by family you don't necessarily know how to answer. Actually, I'm going to give you three.
Cool.
First, Atheist Experience podcast, beautiful for if you, and also it's a little bit cathartic to hear Matt Dillahunty go in on people and Tracy Harris to go in on people. It's very nice to hear that too. Street Epistemology, Anthony Magnabosco. Anthony has my heart. I love him. He's amazing. He works so hard, and has the bravery to get out there and talk to people face to face and ask them questions about religion. He does Street Epistemology is basically going out and talking to people about what they believe and why, and recording it. So Atheist Experience, Street Epistemology, Anthony Magnabosco on YouTube, and then just because I have fallen in love with this guy, Dr. Robert Sapolsky, Stanford University. He has a course on human behavior. It's an ethology course. It's just great to listen to. He's funny. He's easy to understand. He explains things basically. He talks a million miles a second like I do, but he's excellent. Dr. Robert Sapolsky, free lectures, Stanford. That'll teach you a lot about who you are, how to interpret how other humans think, how to be forgiving of yourself for certain behaviors you exhibit, how to be forgiving of others around you, like family, especially, I talk a lot about them because they have a large influence in my life, as others do as well, other people's family members. So it helps you be forgiving towards them, because they couldn't help but be the crazy people they are. They just couldn't. And Sapolsky really, really does a good job quantifying this. And one more thing, I'm sorry, Dr. Paul Bloom, Yale.
Don't apologize. Dr. Paul Bloom?
Dr. Paul Bloom, Intro to Psychology lectures.
Cool.
When you're on your way to work, when you're exercising, like I said earlier, just put them on in the background. You will hear some
podcast or YouTube or
lectures. All this stuff's on YouTube.
Okay.
I am a listener, watcher.
Cool.
Atheist Experience podcast, Anthony Magnabosco, Street Epistemology videos, Dr. Robert Sapolsky, Stanford University, Human Behavior class, those lectures. There's a playlist. There's about 25 of them. Just push play and let him talk to you.
Awesome.
He's awesome. And Dr. Paul Bloom, Intro to Psychology course, Yale. Free resources.
That's so cool.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's also religious classes too, through Harvard, Yale, definitely Yale, Harvard. I can't remember her name. Dr. Christine. She's an Old Testament professor. But there's a lot out there.
That's cool.
There's no excuse to be ignorant.
Well, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Twitter, Skeptic Nikki right now, and then when I finish, or at Skeptic Nikki, and then when I finish the blog, I hate the word blog, it seems kind of generic, but when I finish my site, I will have an email, and you can subscribe to stuff, and I'm going to try to have like a reward type thing going. I don't just want people to subscribe and not hear from me, but
or just Skeptic, and that's a Skeptic Nikki spelled with 2 Ks, Nikki, all one word, skepticnikki.com, and at Skeptic Nikki, same way,
Yes, skepticnikki.com is in the works. Will be launched momentarily. Cool. Don't know what momentarily is, but
hey, it'll happen eventually.
Stay tuned. It will. Oh, it's happening.
Well, that's why they gotta follow you on Twitter, so they'll know when it's coming out. Exactly.
Keep up with me on Twitter. Any questions you've got for me, I'm here for, here to answer those. If you need just someone to talk to, I'll try to catch DMs. I try, but I get a lot of them, and they get pushed down. So if I missed you, I apologize. I may be able to carry a conversation on for a little bit, but maybe not forever. But I just message me.
Yeah, but you have a lot of followers, so that's hard to do sometimes.
It is hard, but I do appreciate every last one of them.
So people will be patient and they'll understand if you can't get right back to them.
Yes, because some people freak out. Like, I can't believe you hate me. And I'm like, I didn't even know you messaged me. Dude.
It's like,
calm down. Like, I'm sorry that you're freaking out, but I work too.
Exactly. Well, Nikki, thank you so much for taking time out of your weekday. We're recording this on a weekday, and it's late where you're at, so I appreciate you doing that and making time for this, and I appreciate you being on Twitter and being so active, and I've enjoyed, following your tweets and keeping up with the things that you're talking about, so I appreciate that very much, and it's been a lot of fun to hear your story, and thank you for sharing it today.
I want to say thanks. I enjoyed it. I had fun.
Thanks for listening to Voices of Deconversion. Be sure to join us next time by subscribing to the podcast. If you'd like to learn more, check out our newsletter at vodpodcast.com.